Commander Mason Hale had a smile that belonged on a man carrying fresh donuts into an office meeting, not on the chief tactician of Earth's Interstellar Response Division. That smile was his shield, his signature, and, according to 3 separate alien military studies, a preliminary indicator of incoming catastrophe. But on the morning the news arrived, the smile hadn't yet sharpened. He stepped into the command hall of the human embassy ship Cleveland with his usual relaxed stride, greeting the crew as though he weren't responsible for half the classified nightmares whispered across the galaxy. He carried a steaming metal mug that read "World's Okayest Uncle." The title wasn't inaccurate. He'd been volunteering at the colony, 14 Orphanage, only 2 months earlier, showing the kids how to make paper gliders. One of them, a 5-year-old girl named Mina, had made a crooked one that flew like a confused pigeon. He'd kept it. It sat tucked now inside his uniform's inner pocket, creased, childish, priceless. The lights in the embassy hall flickered as an encrypted transmission cut through open channels. Admiral Rhea's voice, usually ironclad and steady, trembled as she ordered all personnel to stand by. Mason paused mid-sip, the mug hovering near his lips. Something in the Admiral's tone carved a quiet line through him. Conversations in the hall thinned to silence. Even the ship's hum seemed to hold its breath. A red holographic window burst to life before the assembled crew. Static, then shapes, then screaming. The recording's perspective came from exterior surveillance drones orbiting the Colony 14 facility. White buildings, tiny figures, the bright colors of play structures. Then shadows streaking across the frame. Galactic Empire destroyers, unmistakable even in silhouette. Mason's grip tightened. The mug shook. On screen, children ran, some waving tiny cloth Earth flags without understanding the meaning of the incoming fire. The first shot hit near the greenhouse. The screen pixelated, then stabilized in time to capture the second volley, a brutal, deliberate sweep from one end of the orphanage grounds to the other. The explosion swallowed color, walls, voices. A thin ripple of dust expanded outward. The feed cut abruptly. No one moved. Mason's heartbeat arrived in slow, heavy blows, each one hollowing something deeper inside him. Someone behind him whispered a curse. Another muttered, "No, no, they wouldn't." But the Empire often would. And this time, they had chosen their target with a cruelty that defied even their history. A soft chime indicated Admiral Rhea's return. Her face appeared, pale and carved from exhaustion. "Confirming total destruction of the Colony 14 Orphanage," she said. "Emergency crews found. Very little." She swallowed. 18 children. 3 caretakers. No survivors. Mason's smile didn't fall. It simply vanished, evaporated from his face as though it had never truly belonged there. A different expression replaced it. Quiet, controlled emptiness. The kind that made entire war councils uncomfortable. "Do we have identification on the Empire ships?" Mason asked, voice steady. Their signatures weren't masked. "It was deliberate," Reyes said. "A message." Mason exhaled slowly, as though weighing that word in his palms. Message. The Empire had crossed borders before, but children, human children, were a different threshold. A sacred boundary. Even alien civilizations with no concept of parenthood knew not to touch that line. A ping sounded behind him as Ambassador Vok of the Sarn Collective approached, his scaled face tense. "Commander, the wise councils request your people remain rational. Humans are known to, how do you say, react vigorously." Mason blinked at him. "Vok, they vaporized toddlers." Yes, tragic," Vok murmured quickly. "But let us not escalate." Mason turned. The smile that returned to his lips was gentle, polite, and catastrophically calm. "I appreciate your concern. Truly. Let me reassure you, we're very rational." Vok's throat sacs flickered in panic. Everyone knew that when humans claimed they were very rational, something irreversible had already begun moving. The internal coming channel brightened again, this time with the sound of hurried footsteps and hushed alarms. Agent Danielle Moretti, Mason's sharp-tongued second-in-command, strode into the hall. "Sir, Earth Command wants your immediate presence." The Senate's calling an emergency session on Helios 9. They want you representing humanity. Mason nodded slowly. I assume they expect me to smile through it. They expect you to prevent a galaxy-wide war, she replied. He almost laughed. Then they picked the wrong guy. She didn't contradict him. As they walked toward the transport dock, Mason caught glimpses of the crew, faces stiff, jaws clenched, grief warping into something darker. Humans processed pain through motion, through planning, through vengeance tucked neatly behind protocol. The hall mirrored a hive preparing to sting. Moretti stepped closer, lowering her voice. I know what those kids meant to you. He didn't answer. You kept every drawing they gave you. Still, he said nothing. Sir, she whispered, don't go into that meeting angry. He stopped at the threshold of the embarkation chamber. The door slid open, revealing the dim-lit interior of the shuttle waiting to take him to Helios 9. I'm not angry, he said, voice soft. I'm focused. Moretti looked at him with uneasy understanding. Focus from Mason Hale was worse than fury from any other human alive. They boarded the shuttle. The engines engaged with a low growl, and the Cleveland fell away beneath them. Stars stretched into bright threads as they accelerated. Mason watched them blur past, the paper glider, Mina's glider, warm against his chest through the fabric of his uniform. Did they issue an official statement yet? He asked. Moretti shook her head. Empire channels are silent. No denial. No justification. They don't care. They will, Mason murmured. The shuttle crossed the perimeter markers of Helios 9, a vast orbital ring where hundreds of species met to negotiate, argue, and pretend to maintain order. As the docking arms clamped around the craft, Moretti spoke again, hesitantly. What exactly are you planning to say to them, sir? Mason rose from his seat. The artificial lights illuminated the sharp line of his jaw, the steady intensity in his eyes. I'll be polite, he said. Polite? She echoed. He nodded. It's important they misunderstand us for as long as possible. The door hissed open. A wave of alien chatter washed into the cabin, nervous voices, hurried footsteps, rumors of what humans might do. Mason inhaled, smoothing the front of his jacket. His fingers brushed the outline of the folded paper glider. He stepped forward. In the crowd beyond the ramp, the Empire's ambassador waited, flanked by armored guards. His eyes glinted with arrogance, with certainty, with absolute confidence that humans were still the harmless, sentimental species he believed them to be. Mason approached him with the same warm, practiced smile that had calmed entire planetary councils. But the muscles of his cheek ached holding it. He extended his hand. Let's talk, Mason said softly. The Empire's ambassador smirked. And for the first time since the recording, the temperature inside Mason Hale's chest dropped to something glacial. The ambassador leaned closer, whispering, Children are collateral. Mason's smile didn't change at all. But something behind his eyes finally, irrevocably did. The Senate chamber of Helios 9 glowed like a ring of molten glass suspended in darkness, each panel humming with distrust as representatives from 50 worlds gathered. Aliens of every texture and color shifted nervously, their voices low, their gazes snapping to the entrance as Commander Mason Hale strode in with the easy gait of a man arriving at a family barbecue instead of a tribunal. His smile was relaxed, pleasant, even welcoming. Yet somehow, every species capable of sensing danger felt their spines tighten. He carried no weapons. Only a mug of coffee so dark it reflected the chamber lights like a pool of spilled night. The smell drifted across the rows of delegates, causing several species to recoil, flaring nostrils or covering sensory organs. A few whispered warnings about human stimulants, myths claiming caffeine allowed humans to unlock battle instincts like ancient war beasts. Mason had encouraged none of those rumors, but he also hadn't corrected them. Humanity didn't correct much these days, it served them too well. The Empire's delegation observed his approach with smug disdain. Their ambassador, Ambassador Threx, awaited him on a raised platform shaped like a blade striking downward. His armor gleamed as if polished just for the humans' arrival. The sight of Mason's casual posture, the coffee, the soft smile, hit Threx like an insult he didn't yet know how to challenge. "Commander Hale," Threx said, voice smooth, sharp. "I presume Earth sends you to beg for mercy." Mason took a slow sip of coffee. "No, no begging today. Wrong shoes for it." Murmurs rippled. Several senators turned to one another, puzzled by the idiom. Others recognized the humor layered with an unsettling undercurrent, and their nervousness deepened. He approached the center podium and set his mug upon it, carefully, politely, like someone placing a candle at a memorial. The gesture made Threx's right eyelid twitch. Humans excelled at symbolic gestures that meant more than they claimed. "The Galactic Senate convenes," announced the hostcast elder, her crystalline voice echoing. "Earth requests a formal investigation regarding the attack on Colony 14. "Attack?" Threx repeated dryly. "Your terminology is emotional. Those were unsanctioned structures, built without proper tribute to the Empire's border patrol." Mason nodded as though receiving an interesting cooking tip. "Fascinating. I didn't realize children required tribute." Threx smirked. "All citizens of conquered space do." "But Earth," Mason said, leaning slightly on the podium, "is not conquered space, and the children were not soldiers. They weren't even holding sticks threateningly. Just little flags." Threx lifted his chin. "Weakness must be pruned when seen." A cold breeze seemed to drift through the room despite the climate controls. Even species known for their brutality glanced away. A Rylax envoy muttered, "They do not know what they toy with." Mason's smile did not falter. "Thank you for your honesty, Ambassador. I'll be sure to pass that philosophy along to my people." Threx waved a dismissive hand. "Do not play righteous, human. You hide behind sentimentality. You cry over children while pretending to stand tall." Mason's fingers tapped once against his mug. A subtle gesture. Too subtle for most. But not for anyone who had truly studied human warfare. Moretti, watching from the rear delegation box, inhaled sharply. He was containing himself, barely. "We don't cry over children," Mason said softly. "We bury them. And then we decide what to do about it." The Senate chamber dimmed as the holoscreen activated, projecting the recovered footage. Gasps, growls, and horrified silences filled the air. The Empire's delegation shifted uncomfortably. Even Threx's smirk weakened, though he shielded it behind arrogance. "You show this to gain pity?" he asked. "No," Mason replied. "To ensure everyone here understands the truth." He flicked his wrist, and the recording froze on the image of a boy clutching a fabric Earth flag, eyes wide at the descending shadow. Mason's face hardened infinitesimally. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. "And the message was delivered," Threx said. Mason inhaled, slow, measured. "Excellent. Then allow me to deliver ours." The room hushed. Even the automated ventilation seemed to still. "We're not here to beg," Mason continued. "We're here to inform. Earth does not take revenge. Earth responds." Threx scoffed. "Respond? With what? Your pathetic patrol fleets? Your antique plasma cannons? Your reliance on chemical stimulants and primitive engineering?" At that, Mason finally laughed. A genuine warm laugh that echoed lightly around the chamber, and scared far more species than an explosion would have. "Oh, Ambassador," he said, "you misunderstand in ways that worry me." Moretti muttered from the back, "Here we go." Mason straightened. "The Earth Senate asked me to stabilize the situation. Avoid escalation. Maintain diplomacy." His eyes drifted across the observing delegations, lingering on the wise and ancient among them. "But diplomacy has requirements. One of which is good faith." Threx folded his arms. "And you believe we lack it?" "I believe," Mason said, voice lowering into something colder, "that you've mistaken our restraint for inability." A Zohar elder trembled. "The smile is cracking. Beware." Threx leaned forward. "Humanity is outmatched. Any retaliation will be crushed." "Maybe," Mason said. "But before we get crushed, we tend to throw a good punch." The chamber erupted into overlapping voices. The host caste elder struck her staff to silence them. "Commander Hale, state your formal request." "Simple," Mason replied. "A public apology. Reparations. Surrender of the fleet commander responsible." Threx laughed openly. "Request denied." "You sure?" Mason asked. "Completely." Mason nodded thoughtfully, lifting his mug to his lips. The surface rippled from the faint tremor in his hand. Something almost no one noticed, but Moretti did. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. Threx stepped closer. "Humans think sentiment makes them strong. But it only makes you predictable." Mason's eyes flicked up, and the smile he wore changed. Not vanishing, not hardening, but shifting into something unbearably calm. "You're right," he murmured. "We are predictable. Predictably protective. Predictably loyal. Predictably furious when someone harms our young." Threx smirked. "Yet you stand here powerless." Mason leaned forward. "Ambassador, today I'm here as a diplomat. That means I can't threaten you." He paused, letting the silence stretch, letting every species lean in. "But," he continued, "I can warn you." Threx's smirk wavered. "Warn me of what?" Mason lifted his mug again, finishing it in a slow swallow. He set it down with deliberate care. "While we talk," he said softly, "your star system is being scanned." The lights flickered. Threx blinked. "What?" Mason straightened. "You should really fix the wormhole tunnels behind your territory. Anyone can slip through." A tremor of panic spread across the non-Empire seats. Threx grabbed the podium edge. "You lie." Mason smiled again, the same gentle, infuriating, polite smile that had always terrified the wise species. "I don't have to lie," he whispered. "I just have to let you catch up." The chamber lights dimmed as new alarms began to sound. The Senate screens flickered, searching for an incoming feed. Mason didn't move. He simply said, "You might want to answer that." The alarms that echoed through the Helios 9 Senate chamber didn't sound like ordinary alerts. They carried a deeper resonance, something metallic, ancient, and foreboding. Even species with no auditory organs felt a vibration crawl along their exoskeletons. Ambassador Threx jerked toward the central holoscreen as it flickered violently, trying to stabilize an unexpected transmission. Mason Hale remained perfectly still, hands folded in front of him, as though he were waiting for an elevator instead of witnessing the first cracks in a star empire's pride. The screen sputtered once more before blooming into a clean, crystal-blue projection. Dozens of alien senators leaned forward. Mason recognized the timestamp and ID code instantly. It was a live feed. From inside the Empire's territory. The image sharpened to reveal a chained corridor of glowing wormhole gates, the Empire's innermost network. Except they weren't glowing with their usual teal hum. They pulsed with a soft, unnatural amber light. Human amber. A collective gasp swept the chamber. The Zohar elder whispered, "They breached the inner lanes, impossible." Threx's posture stiffened. "Pause the feed. Now." No one moved. Not even his own guards. Mason let out a soft breath, as though disappointed that things had escalated sooner than scheduled. "Ambassador, I tried to warn you. You really should put locks on those back tunnels. It's a safety issue." Threx hissed, "This is fabricated." Mason tilted his head. "Then you should be relieved." But Threx was not relieved. His mandibles quivered as he watched the amberlit wormhole gate widen, followed by the unmistakable silhouette of an Earth vessel. Sleek, black, silent, its hull etched with the white sigil of the Interstellar Response Division. The ship didn't roar, didn't posture, didn't announce its presence. It drifted forward like a ghost slipping through a curtain. More ships emerged behind it. 5, 10, 20. A whisper rippled from the far balcony. "How did humans cloak movement on that scale?" "They didn't," another responded. "They planned it for years." Mason didn't correct either assumption. "It appears," Mason said gently, "that we were already inside when you began your little tantrum at the orphanage." Threx spun toward him. "You invaded our space." No, Mason replied, calm and unblinking. We just walked through an open door. The holofeed shifted abruptly to a view from within the Empire's Tevelin system. Planetary scanners, automated defense grids, and orbital fortresses all flickered erratically, their systems sensing the wrong kind of energy signature, human. The Empire's military command center, projected in one corner of the feed, descended into chaos as officers screamed conflicting orders. They're jamming us. No, reroute the frequency. How many ships are there? We can't count, there's interference on every spectrum. Mason winced sympathetically. Oops. The chamber erupted into shouts again, but this time, the panic wasn't directed at humans, it was directed at the Empire. Several allied races glared at Threx. The wise species stared at Mason with equal parts awe and dread, realizing the truth of the old rumors. Humanity rarely showed its teeth, but when it did, worlds trembled. Threx's composure cracked. This is an act of war. Mason turned toward him with the patience of a teacher addressing an unruly child. War requires declaration, paperwork, logistics. Humans don't like paperwork. We prefer efficiency. The lights above flickered as the transmissions multiplied. New feeds displayed human scouts slipping effortlessly past anti-intrusion grids. Others revealed Earth's drones perched on Empire comm satellites like quiet birds observing a battlefield. Then, an image filled the entire screen. A humanoid figure in matte black armor standing aboard a human command ship. The helmet visor retracted to reveal Admiral Reyes. Her voice thundered across the Senate chamber. Empire leadership is ordered to stand down. Failure to comply will result in immediate incapacitation of your star. Silence. Pure, crushing silence. Threx barked out a laugh that cracked on the edges. You humans don't have the technology to. Reyes raised a cylindrical device. Its surface glimmered with dark energy patterns. We call this a graviton cascade array. Early prototype. She bluffs, Threx insisted, though his voice wavered. Mason shrugged. You can test the theory. At your own risk. The holo-zoom cut to the Empire's star, the heart of their civilization, pulsing violently as unseen forces brushed against its stability. The surface danced with electromagnetic snarls, something stars were not supposed to do. Not naturally. In the chamber, 100 species recoiled. A scarled diplomat whispered. They threaten the sun itself. Mason corrected mildly. Not a threat. More like a polite notice. Threx trembled. You monsters. Funny, Mason said softly. We get called that only when someone harms our kids. He turned away from the podium, beginning to walk down the steps. The movement was slow, deliberate, predatory. The kind of walk that didn't need raised voices or flashing weapons. It carried history, a history of a species that had survived extinction-level events with nothing but grit and a refusal to die quietly. Species who had studied humans deeply recognized the walk. They flinched. They whispered. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Threx shouted after him. You expect us to surrender to you? Mason paused halfway down the steps. He didn't turn around. Surrender? No. His voice dropped to a lethal calm. I expect you to feel something. Fear? Threx spat. Not fear, Mason said. Understanding. The projection screens lit up again as a new figure appeared. A terrified Empire officer, eyes wide. Ambassador Threx. He cried. Our sun. Something is destabilizing its outer layers. It's not natural. We've never seen. The transmission cut at the sound of screaming. The chamber froze. Mason inhaled, steady and controlled. Consider this the moment you realize humanity isn't who you thought we were. The ancient races bowed their heads. They had known this truth for centuries but never voiced it aloud. Threx stumbled backward. You would erase a star system? Mason finally turned to look at him. You erased an orphanage. Threx's breath rattled like broken glass. Negotiations. Oh, we're still negotiating, Mason said. I'm just adjusting the tone. He stepped forward again, each footstep echoing like the tolling of a bell. Moretti watched him with a mixture of fear and pride. She'd followed him for years, but even she had never seen the mask slip this far. Mason stopped at the center of the chamber, staring up at the giant projection of the Empire's trembling star. "Ambassador," he said quietly. Threx swallowed. "What?" "Earth offers one final gesture of diplomacy." Threx tried to steady himself. "And what gesture is that?" Mason lifted his chin. "Look closely at your son." The Empire's star filled the Senate chamber like a golden eye, swollen and trembling on the massive holoscreen. Streams of plasma rippled across its surface in unnatural patterns, dimming in some places, brightening in others, like something was dragging invisible fingers through the burning atmosphere. Delegates from dozens of worlds stared in horror, struggling to understand what they were seeing. Commander Mason Hale didn't look at the screen. He watched the Empire's ambassador instead. Threx's breathing had grown ragged, his mandibles twitching as the star's corona fractured into jagged filaments. "You're bluffing," he whispered, though it sounded more like a prayer than a challenge. Mason replied with the gentlest voice in the room. "You keep assuming that." A burst of static cut across the projection. Admiral Rhea's face appeared again, her expression carved from iron. Behind her, the bridge crew moved with frightening clarity, every motion precise, every calculation exact. "Prototype array alignment at 97%, she announced. "Graviton anchors are locking." "Shut it down." Threx yelled toward the projection, as if she could hear him. "By decree of the Galactic Empire, cease your interference." Reyes tapped a control panel. "Ambassador Threx, your decree is noted and respectfully ignored." A ripple of restrained laughter passed through the Senate. Not from amusement, no one was amused, but from disbelief, shock, the kind that felt like standing too close to a collapsing mountain. Threx spun toward Mason. "Your admiral is mad." "She's tired," Mason corrected. "There's a difference." Light from the flickering star washed over him, turning his calm expression into something almost otherworldly. The paper glider in his pocket pressed against his ribs, as if reminding him why he stood here. An Inkari delegate rose from her seat, trembling. "Commander Hale, if you collapse their star, the shockwaves will wreak havoc across neighboring systems. There will be collateral worlds." Mason nodded respectfully. "I'm aware." "And yet you proceed?" His expression didn't harden, but his tone did. "The Empire chose the terms." Threx snarled. "You accuse us of killing children to justify this atrocity." "No," Mason said. "I accuse you of thinking we wouldn't answer." The chamber's lights dimmed again as a new feed materialized, a close-up view of the Empire star's photosphere. The image vibrated violently. Lattice-like shadows appeared around it, spreading into a delicate geometric web the color of cracked bone. "What is that?" someone whispered. Mason didn't answer. Admiral Reyes did. "Plan Candlelight," she said, her voice echoing with clinical calm. "Officially classified for 31 years. Designed for a single purpose: neutralizing civilizations that target human minors." The declaration dropped into the chamber like a meteor. Even delegates who despised humans recoiled. Threx staggered forward, pointing a shaking finger. "You would extinguish the source of life for 6 inhabited worlds." Mason raised a brow. "You extinguished 18 children before lunch. There is no equivalence." "I agree," Mason said softly. "Which is why your punishment is larger." Threx lunged toward him, only to be restrained by his own guards. His voice cracked into a scream. "We are a sovereign empire." "Not anymore," Mason replied. On the holoscreen, the star bulged inward suddenly, like a breath sucked too hard and held too long. The geometric lattice tightened. Tendrils of white-hot plasma spiraled and vanished into unnatural folds of space. Panic spread across the chamber. Mason didn't move. The Inkari delegate stepped closer. "Commander, what happens if Plan Candlelight completes its sequence?" Mason met her gaze. "The star collapses into a stable nothing." "A black hole," she whispered. "No," He looked back at the trembling sphere. A zero-mass void. A candle blown out. Some species had no concept of candles, but they understood erasure. They understood loss. They understood the quiet grief woven into his voice. On the projection, Admiral Reyes raised one hand. Array alignment at 100%. Final confirmation required. The chamber held its breath. All eyes turned to Mason. He didn't speak. He simply closed his hand around the mug he had carried earlier, the one that still sat on the podium. The cheap metal, warmed by lights and cooled by fear, pressed into his palm with a familiarity that steadied him. He remembered Mina's crooked smile, the way she asked him why grown-ups didn't fix everything in the universe. He had joked then. But some promises didn't need cleverness, they needed action. Mason lifted the mug and softly tapped it once against the podium. A single, quiet sound. Admiral Reyes nodded. Executing plan candlelight. Threx collapsed to his knees. The star convulsed. Its surface rippled outward in a frozen wave. Light twisted as if caught between mirrors. A deep hum resonated through the chamber, felt more than heard. The web of graviton anchors flashed bright white. Then everything went silent. In the vacuum of space there was no sound to hear, but the holoscreen translated the tremor into a soft, eerie whisper, like air being sucked into an empty bottle. The star's outer layers peeled away in glowing sheets before collapsing inward, swallowed by the expanding void at its center. Delegates stared, unable to look away. The star dimmed, flickered, and then went out. A perfect sphere of absolute blackness replaced it, surrounded by fading tendrils of starlight. The Empire's sun had been erased, not exploded, not destabilized, but simply removed. The chamber felt impossibly cold. Mason inhaled through his nose, a slow, steady breath. Threx sobbed. "You killed us." "No," Mason said quietly. "You killed yourselves. We just finished the sentence." The Ankari delegate trembled violently. "Commander Hale, you could have destroyed the galaxy." "No," Mason replied. "Only theirs." A long silence hung over them, heavy as stone. Then the holoscreen shifted again, revealing Admiral Reyes' solemn face. "Humanity will not pursue further action if the surviving Empire worlds surrender peacefully and accept external governance until reparations and safety conditions are met." Threx spat. "Governance? Reparations? You turn our tragedy into advantage." Mason stepped toward him. "You turn children into targets." Threx looked up with burning hatred. "One day, human, another empire will rise. And they will do to you what you've done to us." Mason tilted his head, studying him. "Perhaps. But they'll remember this day first." He turned away, walking back toward the exit ramp. Delegations parted around him instinctively. Not from fear alone, though there was plenty of that, but from recognition. Humans were no longer the unpredictable newcomers fumbling through diplomacy. They were something older, sharper, something every species had half believed and half dismissed for centuries. The apex predators who built starships. Moretti joined his side, her expression tight. "Sir, was this the only way?" Mason didn't respond immediately. He paused at the threshold of the chamber, the artificial lights outlining his silhouette in gold and shadow. "No," he said at last. "But it was the only way they'd understand." The chamber behind him buzzed with shaken voices, frantic calculations, and terrified realizations. Yet in the midst of that chaos, a different signal chimed through the Senate Hall. A small incoming transmission flagged with the signature of Earth's deep-range scouts. Moretti frowned. "Another feed?" Mason lifted a brow. "Play it." The Senate screens flickered once more. An image materialized. A fleet. Human. Massive. Silent. Waiting. But not at the Empire's former star. This one hovered at the edge of another system, another empire, another threat. Threx stared in confusion. Why are your ships there?" Mason's shoulders relaxed in a way that was somehow far more dangerous than tension. "Because," he said softly, "Plan Candlelight wasn't our only preparation.